Good evening, I'm Kenji Bunch, Artistic Director of Fear No Music, here with our Executive Director, Monica Ohuchi.
We're so delighted that you're joining us this evening for the long-awaited return of locally sourced sounds. In this concert, we celebrate composers living and working here in the Pacific Northwest region.
Locally Sourced Sounds is a favorite event of ours and of our audiences, and we're so happy to be able to bring it back to you. This year's program features 6 composers living and working here in Portland. Lifia Teguh, Kirsten Volness, Drew Swatosh, Jesse Ehrenberg, Lisa Neher, and Fear No Music's very own James Shields.
And a very special thank you to our season sponsor, Ronnie LaCroute. Ronnie, we couldn't do any of this without you. And we hope you enjoy the program this evening. Thank you so much.
matter. Black lives matter. Pussy grabs back. 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 Education, not deportation. 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 The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
with us. We'd love to have you here. And if the composers could join me on stage, that'd be wonderful. We'll just have a brief chat. Stick around if you'd like. Okay, so what I was thinking is this. Rather than me asking each of you a question, and I'd love to minimize the amount of me talking and maximize the amount of the six of you talking. So I'll start things off by asking a question to the composer to my left. And then if you could all continue that and just ask each other questions, I think that'd be a lot of fun. So are we cool with that? Does that work? So James, you wrote this early on in the pandemic. I remember my big accomplishment early on in the pandemic was discovering that I could grow new scallions out of old scallions. And the rest of us were making sourdough and watching Bridgerton, and you wrote this insane piece. How did you have the energy for that?
Well, I'm primarily a performer, and I just said to myself, if I can't write a piece right now while I have all the time in the world, then who am I kidding? And the joke I make is that every time I write a piece, the composer part of my brain quits after each piece. But for some reason, I always come back to it a year or two later and just figured, with all this time in my hand, I got to write something. And my initial idea was just to write a 4-minute piece, with just a string of 16th notes in it that was traded along from player to player, and it turned into a 12-minute piece with the same idea. So there's 16th notes going throughout, and it just was a project to keep me sane during that time and just keep busy. We also did the scallion thing though, so that was a good one. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me pass the torch. I wanted to ask you about visual art, and have you? How much of that piece? And I'm sorry if there's a program note that I should have read that will answer this question, but how much of was the music fitted to the visual art? Because for me, watching it, it felt like it really was, and there were a few transitions where it felt like it made a lot of sense. But I wasn't sure if that was just a coincidence or not. And just curious if you've worked with combining visual art and music before.
Yes, thank you. Good question. In this case, the piece was commissioned by a cellist who is specifically creating or commissioning Schwann to create video works to go along with these pieces that were written. And so in this case, the music came first and the video came after. And as you can see, she actually took these very high macro lens photos of leaves that she found on the ground. So all of those photos of leaves you saw were actual leaves that she then animated. So I'm sure it took forever. But in my experience, at least, a lot of times I've worked with artists where I've written the music and they create a video to go along with it, or the other way around. And I guess there's one project I was part of called Meridian Project where we worked with an astrophysicist to basically do a multimedia performance lecture about dark matter research that he was doing. And so in that way, we were really building the storyline along with the music and the video elements, and all of it was being generated at the same time. So it just depends on the situation.
Cool.
All right, Jesse. I'm so excited that you're part of this concert. Jesse actually wrote this piece in my composition class at Reed College, so it's really exciting. So I maybe know more answers about it than you do already, but I guess my question for you is, your piece was so quiet and delicate, and also, it was really changing the way that I listened while I was here in this space, and I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about that, how you were thinking about that element of the piece.
So I wrote this piece also at the beginning of the pandemic, and something I was doing every day to kind of stay sane was to go on these long walks. to Creston Park. I don't know if any of you know it. And there's this beautiful tree there, and I would just sit for hours and look at the way that the wind hit the branches and the way that the wind hit the leaves. And then I would look around the whole park, and I would think about all the different kinds of trees and all the little plants on the ground and how they're all responding to these forces that are outside of them in totally different ways. You know, it was the pandemic, and everyone's like experiencing this horrible thing. And it was really nice to be outside of myself for a second and to be quiet and to be immersed in the world around me. And I thought, how can I make something that's about the wind, but it's not about sound? It's about the way that the wind is moving through all of these things. And how can I create that sense of quietness that I feel when I'm alone in the world like that? How can I bring that to a listener and put the listener back in the world? For me, that was like this ritual of going from being in my head and feeling absolutely horrible to being in the world again. And I wanted to share that, so yeah. For you, I have this question. I was listening to your piece, and I love all of the timbres that you achieve from a single note. I felt like I was listening to it, and it like reinvented the way that I think about what you can play on the piano, and like how many possible notes and how many possibilities you can get. And I was curious, like, when you're playing with extended techniques like that, how much of it is like something that you can predict in a solid way, and how much of it is like spontaneous in the projects? I'm just so curious about all of it. Yeah.
Well, honestly, a lot of the things that I put on were a lot of trials and errors. And yeah, I mean, the pandemic, you know, like lots of trials and errors. Anyway, but a lot of the technique that I mean, the sound that I want to achieve also stem from my upbringing in Indonesia. And I've always grown up with the classical training, but also the music that, you know, were very popular in Indonesia. Gamelan is not as popular as it is right now compared to back in the days, but you can still hear gamelan music on the corner of the streets, like every now and then, even by my house, like a group of people by the gas station would still play it in like a park situation. So yeah, it's like street music sort of situation. And I was like, oh, maybe it'd be cool to evoke the sound of gamelan with an instrument that I've grown up with, right? Because like gamelan, you can only play it with a group of people, whereas I'm a one-person, and it's really hard to get a group of people with all the metallophones to sit together. So yeah, and then I tried a few things. Oh, it works out to sound like the gong and then like the metallophones, and kind of goes from there. Yeah, thank you. Hi, I am very interested with the electronics. And also, well, I mean, two parts of the question. First will be how much of the electronics like came into play when you first composed it? Was it like, oh, I know it's going to be a flute and electronic kind of piece? Or is it like, oh, it'd be cool if I add the electronics to create the effects? That'd be the first one. And then, am I allowed to ask two? Well, anyway. Two, how do you have so much bravery to take that kind of issue that polarized the country so much? And yeah, props up for your bravery, for sure.
So I think with that piece, it kind of came, different sections came differently. It was like, okay, that the first section I very much thought about, okay, wouldn't it be cool if like I create counterpoint but with the person themselves, and then, but then that second section was like, that was just an after the fact thing. So it was dependent on each section. So it's like in that protest chant section, I was like, I wanted to create the sense of like the unity and like everyone being together and kind of like the intensity. So I had it all build up and then it all just kind of fade away. And then I went with, then kind of there's the, with like a lot of like popular American music since the 1950s, you get this very kind of grimy, distorted type of sound. So that's where the whole inspiration for combining like the sound of like electric guitar with the distortion on the flute with the beatboxing to get that hip hop vibe. My question for you is, how much did the shape and the movement and the sound of comments influence your writing of your piece?
So the overall shape of the piece was very influenced by the sort of existence of comets, which is that when we see them, it's just for a very small amount of their existence. But also, when we see them, that's the only time they look like that, is because the heat from our sun is what's causing the off-gassing and the tail that makes the comet look the way it looks. So when it's farther out in space, away from our solar system, it doesn't look like that. It just looks like a rock and ice ball. So that sort of gave us that beginning and ending with the bowed sounds. That's the most subtle sounds, the most kind of lonely sounds in my mind. And then the more active place in the middle and sort of final third, sort of imagining the comet picking up speed as it's coming around the planet or around the sun, around the solar system. Beyond that, I mean, the other parts of the structure were inspired by the harmonies I was coming up with and different combinations of 4 notes, which is a little easier to play with 4 mallets, and 5 notes, which is a little more challenging, but very cool and asymmetrical. And sort of once the material of the piece was composed, then it started to be something I was interested in exploring for the sake of its musical ideas. So, yeah.
Thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Our next concert will be live at the Old Church on Monday, May 9th, and then online 2 weeks later. I hope you can join us for Asian Resilience and Joy. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you're able, please donate. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.